that happened while you were on your first deployment that we didn't talk about, and I know you wear a bracelet. Can you tell me about that bracelet and that incident?
Yes. I wear a bracelet, which is in memory of Staff Sergeant Joseph Fanoff, and he was one of the members of the 102nd Infantry, again, the unit that I was attached to and supporting during the whole deployment. And I know we've talked a lot of times in the previous interview about how we were an economy of force, or, very small group of people, and a lot of times we did combined missions. So we would do half of headquarters 102nd in one mission and half of my platoon together. So we would often run missions where Sergeant Fanoff was on them. And so then on this day we were building the vehicle patrol base, which later became Kopnagil, which was north and west a little bit of Medderlam. And we were driving up and back, and I know we talked about before too, the geography made it so that there was only one way in and one way out in this area. So we went up there, did a resupply, brought up a bunch of building materials, things like that. And then on the way back, we were maybe about 20 minutes out, maybe 15 kilometers out from the FOB, and we were hit with an IED, or an IED was blown up on our mission, and it was a command wire IED, and they were definitely targeting the last vehicle because all of us had driven over it, and then it was detonated purposely on the last vehicle, which was the vehicle that Sergeant Fanoff was in, along with a few other people who were okay, actually. And so Sergeant Fanoff was unfortunately killed that day. It was the anniversary of that event was actually just this past Saturday, December 15th. December 15th, 2006. So yeah, I wear the bracelet, as a reminder of him, and it's kind of nice because I feel like he gets to go do everything I get to do.
That's cool. When that happened, where were you in the convoy?
I was in the front truck, which was where I normally was. I kind of oftentimes put myself in the front truck because I wanted my soldiers to see that no matter where we were going, I would be willing to go there first. So if I did it, then they could do it and their vehicle could do it if my vehicle could do it. So
were the vehicles close enough that you heard the explosion?
Oh, there was no way not to hear the explosion. They heard the explosion back on the FOB 15 kilometers away. An IED is the loudest thing you'll ever hear. It's like incomprehensibly loud.
What were your thoughts immediately on hearing it?
Well, immediately, I mean, this was not our first IED strike. It was just the first one that I was involved in where someone was killed. My platoon had various other incidents of IED strikes. Oh yeah, I knew immediately it was an IED. It's too loud to be an RPG or some other kind of mortar round or something. It's just so much louder that it's instantly that. And the first thing you always do is obviously try and reach those people on the radio to see if they're okay. No response, no response, no response, which obviously ups the level of anxiety immediately. And a Sergeant Chris Vincent, who's now Sergeant First Class in the 102nd, was also on the mission. He and I were kind of running that mission together. He took the lead on it, actually, for most of the mission planning on that one, and I was kind of planning the support side of the mission. So we halted the convoy. We actually kept driving a little tiny bit, maybe for like 20 seconds as we were trying to get radio comms with them. And then the second to last vehicle said, Sergeant Fanoff's vehicle was hit. They're not behind us. Because sometimes they blow an IED and it doesn't hit anyone. It luckily misses a vehicle and you can continue driving by. But that was not the case. So the vehicle was actually flipped over and off the road. So they knew that something had happened to the people inside. So we stopped and set up a security perimeter. People ran back to assess the situation, etc. And I remember a feeling of great stress and anxiety. And it's interesting, I heard it from the other side as well, which is that Sergeant Vincent went back to assess the scene, and I tried to reach back and let the TOC back at Medderlom know what was going on. And because we were far enough away and there was some land masses in between us, we would have to use the satellite radio, TAC-SAT radio it's called. And if you have on certain electronic jamming devices that we use, it kind of blocks the satellite radio from you receiving the incoming message. So even though the procedure was that we turn them off back in that day, you would turn them off. Now the jammers don't really do that the same way they used to, but back then they did. And somehow, I guess, in the explosion, even though they crawled into that vehicle and tried to turn that jammer off so that we could communicate, I think maybe it disconnected from that off-on switch and somehow stayed on. But the point is that I was continuously trying to reach back to tell them, hey, we need QRF, we need a medevac, we need help, this is what happened, 1 potential KIA, 2 injuries, and I kept calling and calling and calling, and no one was answering, and it was a terrible feeling. And from the other side, at the TOC, they had heard the explosion, so they knew something had happened. And they said that they kept answering us, and they were like sick over the fact that we just couldn't connect. And it got to the point where I was saying, any station, anyone who can hear me, this is what's happening. And apparently people from all over the theater were trying to respond to us, and we couldn't hear them. We couldn't hear anyone. So I finally decided that it was very important in this case to get some communication. So I took my vehicle and went down the road a little ways, out of the range where any of the jamming systems were going to affect us, and around a corner where we could kind of pull security down the other direction, and finally made positive comms with them and let them know what was going on. But it was a little nerve-wracking.
So did they send help?
Yeah, the QRF came out eventually, and then unfortunately, it was not a case of fortunately and unfortunately, I guess, because all of us probably would have felt worse if it was something where we could have saved him, but we didn't do it in time. But there was no option of that, so it was pretty cut and dry. So, but we did have 2 individuals that were also in the vehicle with him who needed to get checked out quickly. They were definitely in shock. Definitely. I mean, one of them was ejected from the turret. Gunner was ejected out into the street, and, he had a bunch of shrapnel in his vest and stuff. But luckily, they really virtually came out physically unscathed from that incident, which was amazing.
Now, that was near the end of your first deployment?
That was in December, and then I know we went over the timeline last time. The infantry went home in like April. I left Medderlom, and then I was in Afghanistan till towards the end of May, and then I left and went back to Fort Drum.
So in May of 2006?
7.
Oh, good question.
Mm-hmm.
So May of 2007, you left Afghanistan from your first tour. Where did you go then? To Fort Drum? Yep, Fort Drum.
And
what were your duties there?
Company XO in Alpha Company 710th BSB. And I performed that role all the way until I got promoted that summer to captain, and I was released from active duty. I put in my packet to transfer back to the Guard, and I was released from active duty in October 2007 and transferred back to the Connecticut Guard.
before we continue, because I know you go on a second deployment, do you have any other memorable experiences that you want to talk about from your first deployment or from your time afterwards at Fort Drum?
I mean, there's so many memorable things, but it's obviously, too much to say in an interview. But I was very lucky to have the amazing group of soldiers that I did on that deployment. The stars kind of aligned, I think, because it was, I don't think that anyone else that I've spoken to has had so few problems with their soldiers and so many successes. And I really think that it was attributed to them. I mean, they all worked so hard for me, great NCOs, great soldiers, and it was a lot of their first deployments too, and they were very motivated. And I think it was just the time in Afghanistan, the time period in the war, those people being attached to the 102nd, I think everything came together perfectly, and we had a very, very, despite obvious negative things, very positive deployment experience.
Alyssa, this time might be a good time to talk about you being a female commander. Now, were you the first female commander for the National Guard?
No. So what happens is I come back to the Guard, and I did a little bit of work in the 3 shop I did a state sling load course and some other stuff. And then the people from the 102nd, the chain of command from the 102nd, got the warning that they were going to be deploying again. And they needed a company commander this time for the support company. And so they asked me would I do it. And I said, well, sure, of course.
So that's how you get on active duty again?
Yeah, well, what happened is I took command of its F Company 186 BSB, and I took command of that unit in December 2008. So, and at that point, I was the first female commander in the 102nd. And I know it has a different name, 186 BSB, but they consider it to be attached under the 102nd. So that's what people keep saying. I was the first female to, bring a company with the infantry into combat.
That's pretty historic. How did the guys in the unit accept you as a commander?
Fine, because I already knew all of them. Like, they asked me to be there, you know what I mean? So it wasn't really a hard sell. So I already knew them, and they already knew. Yeah, they asked me to be there because they hoped that I was the right person to take the unit forward into Afghanistan again. So
did you ever encounter any negative feedback or problems because you were a woman commander?
No. Interestingly, the problems I encountered during the first maybe 2 to 3 months of taking command of that unit is that all of the officers in the 102nd knew me, but the soldiers and NCOs of the F Company did not know me because they weren't on the last deployment. And it was not a problem of being a female commander. It was a problem that there were a few people there who came up and approached me and told me that basically that because I was a white female who lived in the eastern part of the state, that there were reservations about me being racist, which is the farthest thing from the truth. But this unit has a lot of inner city folks, has a lot of people who come from a background very different than I grew up with. And I had a great challenge in having them get to know me and see that, I was just another person and I wanted to judge them based on their merits and nothing else. So it took a few months for me to kind of fit in, and then everything was fine. But there was no sex challenge. It was a race challenge for the first few months.
Interesting. So once you took command of that unit, how long did you stay in Connecticut before you were deployed?
We were here training up from when I took command in December 2008, and then we went to Moab Station in November 2009.
What station?
Moab Station, that's like, the Guard deploys by going to a mobilization station. So we went to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and did some additional training and validation there. And then we actually did a JRTC rotation, which is at Fort Polk, Louisiana. Went down there and did a rotation. We learned while we were at Camp Atterbury, I believe, that we were going to be our whole brigade, because the 102nd is part of the 86th Brigade, the 86th Infantry Brigade, and most of that brigade is out of Vermont. They have some units in Massachusetts, some units in Connecticut, but a majority of the brigade is out of Vermont. And we found out while we were at Moab Station with, the rest of the brigade, that the 102nd was going to be sliced out and attached to the 101st Airborne on this next deployment doing a traditional infantry mission. At first, we thought we were going to be doing a mentorship mission more, and then it got switched to a traditional infantry mission.
So you were attached to the 101st Airborne?
Yeah, the 102nd was attached to the 101st Airborne.
And what was your mission going to be?
There was going to still be some mentorship, but it was going to be Colonel Ivan, the battalion commander, was going to be a battle space owner. So he was going to have an area of operations, an AO Iron Grays. Iron Grays is the name for the 102nd. And within that area, he was going to have multiple COPs and FOBs, and he was going to have to divide his forces out to provide a traditional infantry mission, as well as to provide police and Afghan army mentorship in the area. And then we, of course, were going to have to support the whole thing.
Did you know where in Afghanistan you were going to be located?
We got lots of different words, and for most of the time leading up to actually flying into Afghanistan, we thought we were going to be going down towards the border with Pakistan, Torkham Gate area, Nangarhar province, down there, and that was what we were planning for this whole time. And then we did all those training events, and we flew from, I believe it was shortly into maybe the end of January, beginning of February, beginning of February, when we flew straight from Fort Polk right to the whole process we talked about before, multiple stops, and then you go to Manus, again, which is still the air base that's the point of embarkation for in the country. And we're in Manus, and we get the word, Colonel Ivan had already gone forward and was in country, setting things up. And we get the word back, hey, we have a change of where we're going, change of how we're being divided out, change of everything. So it was like, oh, damn, like last minute, we're literally about to send people to where we thought we were going to be going. And now it's, here's your new mission set. How are you going to divide people up? So really quickly, my first sergeant and I sat down and divided everybody up for this new mission set and went with it. Luckily, we had the leeway to make adjustments throughout the year as needed. So it worked out.
How large was your unit that you commanded?
We started out with, I believe, 96 people. And we ended up with like 92 because of issues, being sent home, family stuff, whatever.
So where did you actually end up?
I ended up back in Medderlam.
What was your reaction when you found out you were going back?
Well, I said, man, maybe I should buy a house there. But it was good and bad. I wanted a new adventure, but it was nice because I already had a lot of information to share with my platoon leaders and NCOs on, here's what this area was like, at least. Here are what the roads were like. Here's routes that we used to take. And here's what we would go down and resupply now at JAF. On the second deployment, we didn't have to go to Bagram anymore. Jalalabad, known as JAF, Jalalabad Airfield, had become a major logistics hub. So And they could just make quick runs there, which was so much faster, like an hour and 40 minutes. So much faster than like the, 6 to 8 hour, 6 to 8 hour drive. And so, I was fortunate in that I had that experience, but I would have liked to do maybe something a little different, but.
How had Metterlam changed since your first deployment?
Well, the actual fob Metterlam had gotten a lot bigger. And the cops that they used to have, Cop Najil, Cop Calagoosh, the one that we built as like a vehicle patrol base, they were now fobs. They still call it Cop Najil. Najil was definitely the most rustic or didn't have as many amenities. But they had been built up significantly. I mean, whole companies now were located at these spots, whereas before it was maybe, a platoon at the most. And there was buildings and water and stuff like that. So it had definitely gotten built up. There was a brand new fob that was not there the last time, Zia Hawk, which was south and on that Route 1 we had talked about before. That existed and it didn't even exist in 2006, 2007 timeframe. So.
How had the living conditions improved?
Slightly. Not very much, to be honest, but had the same shower trailer that we used before. I knew not to drink the water this time. The tents had become little like plywood hardstand buildings with sandbags around them, so I mean it was a slight upgrade. And the talk now was in a cement hardstand building, which was good. The fuel point had been enlarged, which was nice. We had built actually the first fuel point there. We built it. And it was the same fuel point, but it was expanded. It was funny that they use a lot of Afghan, I don't want to say contractors, but like Afghan, we talked about it, I think Afghan civilians who come and work, and we pay them as workers on the base. And most of them were not the same people, but the two guys who worked at the fuel point were the same people from 2006, so.
Did they remember you? They
did. It was very funny. They did. Because we were the ones that had hired them.
Do they live on the base, or do they live on
No, they live in the town around surrounding. But it was fairly similar. It's kind of weird.
Did you do the same kind of missions?
Similar. My folks did the same kind of missions. Now I personally was kind of one level up where I was no longer a platoon leader. I was the company commander. And I had my subordinate platoon leaders divided out. I had one with me. I actually was short a platoon leader for the whole deployment. I never had a maintenance platoon leader. But I had a maintenance warrant officer. And I had my XO, I actually had to split off from us. We had a separate support mission down at Torkham Gate. We had one company that got taken away from the 102nd and was down there doing a different mission at Torkham Gate, and we had to support them. So I had to slice an element off, and I needed a strong OIC and NCOIC, so I sent my XO and an E7 down there to run that.
How was it different for you being the commanding officer this deployment instead of a platoon leader?
It's a lot less fun.
A
lot more responsibility and a lot less fun. Being the platoon, I love the part of the Army where, you go to the field and you train and I love doing those missions, and I love being out there with the guys on the first deployment. So the second deployment, I went on a lot of missions because I felt that it was important for me to show them that I was confident in what they were doing and I was going to ride along with them. So I used it as my means of transportation to go visit all my people at each site, because my people, we talked about, we have the two cops up north, Metterlam, Zia Hawk down here in the south, and then we had the folks down here at Torkham Gate, and I had people at every single location. So a big part of what we did is my first sergeant and I, separately, we tried to rotate through, so we kind of hit them at different times. Tried to go and see everyone frequently, get issues, he took care of, obviously, first sergeant soldier issues and stuff as he went around, and I kind of assessed the status of support, what did they need to do the mission better, that kind of stuff. But I didn't get to, except when one of my platoon leaders was on leave, I didn't really get to run any fun missions or anything this time.
So you basically had to stay at the base. How often do you think you would get out to?
Often, I mean, weekly.
Oh.
Weekly. I would go stir crazy if I was sitting there the whole time, but I tried to really do my best to just be, I had my truck where we would jump in the convoy with our truck so they didn't have to support us with anything external. But I tried to just, as the most part, be another truck commander in the convoy and not take it over from her, because I wouldn't have wanted my commander to do that. So.
Can you recall any memorable experiences from your second deployment?
Well, there are plenty of those as well. We did spend, it was one of those things where I felt like a mother a lot, because I spent a lot of time worrying and hovering over the Blue Force tracker. We had the TOC set up. And so the Blue Force tracker is kind of like a GPS type of deal where you have it in some of the trucks. And then they can also communicate with you, like they can send messages back and forth on this. But it shows you an icon and shows you where they are on the map and how fast they're moving and that kind of stuff. And so whenever they were out on a mission that I wasn't on, one of the people that worked in my TOC with me and I would stay up all night watching what was happening. And they'd be stopped for more than like 10 minutes. Like, what's going on? What's going on? Hey guys, are you okay? Like, a lot of that anxiety and worry, not being able to see what's happening there and not being able to know if everyone's okay or if they needed help or anything. So we still did. I mean, the way we kind of worked it, the missions came into our company CP, and then I would quickly formulate, like, okay, this is what's needed. Either it's a recovery mission, so we need maintenance guys, or it's a resupply mission, so we need distribution. We also did a lot of aerial resupply on both deployments, but a lot more on the second one. So if we got something like that, we'd say, okay, this is going to be a sling load or aerial resupply mission, so get the airfield team out to the airfield. And then from there, I would let my subordinate NCOs or lieutenants handle it and just go check on what was happening, which is what I was supposed to do. So,
what was your one most memorable experience from your second deployment?
I would say it's a period of time where, and I'm sure, I don't know if you've interviewed any of the infantry guys from the second deployment yet, but I'm sure they will speak of the same period of time. We were supposed to, there was this big push to, as you even see in the news now, it's all about having the Afghans do their own missions. And so the Afghan army in our area was like, okay, they're getting direction from higher, go out and do this mission on your own, without your mentors. And, advise against that. And then I said, no, this is what our chain of command is telling us to do. Okay. So the bottom line is, however that transpired, a bunch of the Afghan army goes out to do this mission, and it is a complete disaster. They are shellacked. And vehicles, we had given them to do this mission. This was like a big deal in country, all the way up to division, knew that they were going to go do one of these first missions on their own. So we gave them 50 cals from us, because they don't have any of this stuff. Old Humvees, they have all of our old Humvees. And they go out and all this stuff gets stolen, burned. All these guys are lost in the mountains. Half of them are killed. Some of them are hiding. Other ones are running away. And it is a complete disaster. So hence begins a month and a half of operations called starting Operation Iron Locust. And this now becomes a month and a half of continuous air assault operations where the 102nd Infantry is on point. And it's the main effort for the entire RCE. So all of the 101st in our area is now supporting this month and a half of operations with 102nd Infantry, you know, at the tip of the spear, doing the actual air assaults and everything. So it was so much aerial resupply from our perspective. We did so many different things throughout this to support them. You know, we jumped the gun or brought the gun out. So what that means is we took the howitzer out to a forward location and repositioned it numerous times, which is no easy feat. And we resupplied that with ground resupply throughout this whole operation, and the guys there manning it. And then throughout all of the aerial resupply, throughout all of the aerial air assault missions that the infantry did, we had to resupply all of them because they would be inserted in, and then 4 or 5 days later, you know, they'd be doing the mission the whole time, 4 or 5 days later be extracted. So during that time period, depending on how much contact they ran into and what they were doing, they always needed water, ammunition. No, this was our guys now that basically had to go in, and the first few parts were search and rescue, find who's left, find where they are, recover weapons, recover vehicles, assess what the heck happened, you know, what went wrong. And then after a couple of weeks of that, and they found people alive. They found people, you know, Afghan army members not alive. They found them hiding in a cave. They recovered the 50 cals. And then it turned from that to more of a traditional infantry mission in this area, because clearly, if that happened, there was an enemy presence there. So they went through, you know, different villages and gathered information. And
what was your impression of the Afghan army? Do you think they just weren't ready, or do you think they were less competent?
Both, I guess. They definitely weren't ready, and it's I don't know. It's a hard thing to say. It's a different, I don't think that they don't have the technology to be fighting the way that we, or, you know, our allies fight. They don't, even with the stuff that we give them our old stuff. They don't have the high-tech communication devices, and, you know, we took them through their whole planning process. We tried to mentor them through the planning process and one of their biggest things, actually, I will say, coming from the perspective of a logistics officer, their supply chains are broken. Absolutely broken. So should they have been successful in this initial day operation, it would have been unsuccessful anyway, because they have almost no means of resupplying themselves at that point in time. I don't know what's happening there right now, but at that point in time, they you know, getting the supplies from a hub to the units to distribute them and then out to whoever in the field, that doesn't really exist for them. So they're definitely making strides with the infantry side of the army process, you know, converting their soldiers into better Afghan infantry soldiers.
After this incident, did they continue with the idea of letting the Afghan army go out on their own?
No.
So that ended.
Yep.
What does RCE stand for?
Oh, RC East is like a region of the country. Afghanistan is broken down into RC North, RC South, RC West, RC East, RC Central. So it just, and usually you got an 06 in charge of each RC.
How long were you in Afghanistan for the second deployment?
We were actually in country for only about 9 months the second time. They went to 12-month rotations for the National Guard, but the 12 months includes all of your time at mobilization station. So actually about 10 months. 10 months in country and 2 months at mob station.
Well, you were over in Afghanistan on both deployments. Did you ever do anything special for good luck?
On the second deployment, actually, one of my sister's friends, a roommate that we had right before I left, gave me a little red button that I put on my dog tags. And she said that it was a tradition with her friends that when they went off and did something scary or different, then they would give the people an item charged with good luck and love. And so I took that and put it on my dog tags, and I kept it there the whole time. So
You still have it?
I do still have it. I keep it at home now, but I still have it. Yep.
How did you handle the stress from the job?
Working out, talking with, I was lucky to have made friends with so many of the people in the unit on the first deployment, and I had them all there on the second deployment. So my boyfriend, my significant other, was also a fellow commander there, so we could vent to each other. One of my closest friends was another fellow commander there, so we could vent to each other. So, talking about it and working out. Calling family once in a while was helpful too.
What did you do for entertainment when you weren't on the job?
Well, we watched the Pacific while we were there. A couple of the guys and I watched that each night. We did like a couple week viewing of the Pacific, which was really motivational. And what else? So yeah, movies. There was one of the cool things about being deployed in Afghanistan is that there's like this massive hard drive on the server where there's like a gazillion movies. And
would you watch a movie individually or the whole platoon or something?
The people that worked in the headquarters folks would come in and we would put a movie on. And a lot of times that would help alleviate the stress when we were watching the Blue Force Tracker missions. We would kind of have something funny on in the background so that we wouldn't just be like glued to the Blue Force Tracker screen. We'd be watching the video and out of the corner of our eye watching the other.
Did you see any USO shows while you were overseas?
USO shows didn't ever really commonly come to our bases because they were so small and relatively unsecure compared to other places. On the first deployment, we saw some cheerleaders. I didn't really go see it, but there was some kind of pro football or something cheerleaders that came. One of the really cool things that we had on the second deployment that we didn't have, I don't think there was any cheerleaders. There was and the cops, there was definitely no USO people that came. But we did have the 101st has like a jazz band and a singer. And they came and stayed there for like a week. And it was really cool. They would go into the dining facility and set up during dinner. And they'd be belting it out. And it was really neat to see because everybody came in and was like, ah. And then within like 10 minutes of sitting down, you see everyone's like tapping their foot, bebopping around to the music, and everybody really got into it. That was definitely a morale booster. It was a really neat thing to have that band there.
Did you have any leave or R&R while you were overseas?
Oh yeah, yep. Both tours I had R&R. The second one we were supposed to go in August, like the end of August, beginning of September. And it kept getting canceled and pushed back because of that Operation Iron Locust. Because it was me and, again, my boyfriend, who was a commander of, at that time, Alpha Company 102nd, who was one of the two companies who was continuously doing the air assaults. So both of us and the commander of the other infantry company, our leaves were canceled until mission complete. But we ended up finally getting to go. And learned from the first deployment that it's very hard to go home and then come back and still be motivated. So what we decided to do is we planned a trip to Germany, which was absolutely fabulous. Great decision. Super relaxing. He and I just went and toured all around Germany and France. Had a great, great time.
Did you get to see any other areas while you were over in Afghanistan either time?
Yeah, we talked about, I was at Kandahar for a little bit. I don't know if we talked about it. On this second time, we were in Kandahar for maybe like a week. The first...
Was that part of your R&R?
Nope, just on the process coming in. Went to Bagram a bunch of times again. Throughout the 2 deployments, you know, went all throughout Medellin province, all the FOBs there. Went to Gardez. That was an area that I went to on the first deployment, not the second deployment. Went down to Torkham Gate, a whole bunch on the Pakistani border. Went down to Jalalabad area, but I never got to go out west or up north or anything in Afghanistan at all.
What did you think of your fellow officers?
Most of them were great, really. I remember when I first came on the first deployment as an active duty person with that mentality of like, oh, this isn't going to be, who are these people going to be like? They're National Guard. And they were absolutely great. Professional, funny, good people, less pretentious, I think, in a lot of instances, more down to earth, very, very capable. Second deployment, same thing, absolutely the same thing. And some very good NCOs as well. Very competent people.
What was your impression of the soldiers beneath you?
As we talked about on the first deployment, phenomenal. Second deployment, most of them were absolutely phenomenal as well. There were a few who created some issues. I learned the lesson that, you know, when you're going through mobilization station, if you feel as if maybe you shouldn't take someone, you probably shouldn't. And if you take them anyway, it's probably going to cause you a lot of problems, which it did. But, you know, like I said, it was a lot less fun because this time I had to do things like the Article 15s and,
what
you
is
know.
an Article 15?
It's the Army's punishment system. So when an offense is serious enough that it's before court martial, but more than like a counseling.
So it's disciplinary action.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like a hefty disciplinary action, and you can do either a company grade, which would stay at my level, and I adjudicate this case, or they have field grade, which went up to the battalion commander, and he would do a hearing. We had a couple of those.
What would be like typical offenses that would require?
Let's see. Typical offense might be something like soldiers trying to mail home contraband. We had that. Meaning like 50 cal rounds and stuff. We had soldiers having contraband materials in their rooms, alcohol, stuff like that. What else? Soldiers fighting.
So if you would do an Article 15, what would their punishment be? Would they get shipped back to the United States?
Oh, no.
Or would they do it right there on your base?
They would do it right there. And Article 15 was important because it was part of the punishment could be loss of rank, which obviously means loss of pay. Part of the punishment, it could be extra duty. So extra guard towers, extra, you know, manual labor or whatever, something like that. And then oftentimes, based on whatever the offense was, the person might need to be relocated to a different type of job or something.
Who decided what the punishment was?
For the company grade, that would be me. And for the field grades, it was the colonel, battalion commander.
Did you keep a journal?
I didn't. I'm not a big journaler. No.
Have you written anything about your deployment since you've come home?
No.
Now, your second deployment, when it ended, do you recall your trip back home? What was your next deployment?
So it's interesting because I've actually talked to a couple of people about the fact that you're so excited to come home and then you barely remember the trip home. Like it's almost like maybe you're like so tired and you're so relieved and you're trying to sleep but you don't remember I don't at least remember little details about the trips home. Like I remember so many things that happened while we were there in such detail. But on the way home, I don't remember it because maybe I was just like, and you know, kind of shut that off for.
Did you come home with your whole unit?
Yep, we came. We came in chunks into Manus, and then we were all there for a period of time together, and then came in chunks back to Camp Atterbury, because in the Guard you also have to demob at a demobilization station. So back to Camp Atterbury. And then we were all there together and went through the demobilization process for, it was like 4 or 5 days. And then flew in chunks back to Connecticut. So I think we had 3 flights home that our unit was divided up amongst. So we didn't come home all together. But my first sergeant and I went on the last flight. And by that, everyone, else had been home.
Was it a letdown after being over in the war zone and then coming back?
Yes and no. I think specifically for me, and I know the same for my first sergeant, because of having to deal with all of those issues and having, the responsibility of being in charge of everybody, it was a very nice break. It was kind of like, oh, great, for a little while I'm just responsible for me, which was very nice. It was, being a commander was absolutely, my 2 goals in the Army were take a platoon into combat, take a company into combat. So now I have to come up with a new goal. But it was absolutely rewarding, despite the challenges, hugely rewarding, and an experience that I'm very thankful that I had. But it was definitely nice when I came home to have a little break from that.
Now, when you got home to Connecticut, you weren't active duty anymore?
No, I went back to just being, regular Guard status.
You can go from being in combat zone, active duty, to just doing weekends.
Yeah, you're still getting paid for a little bit because you have built up leave. So you're technically still on your orders, but you're at home on leave. And then your orders run out, and you go back to just drilling. When you first come home, you have the first 3 drills are yellow ribbon and freedom salute, which is, I think you probably attended some of these events, but the freedom salute is just kind of like the governor and stuff welcoming you back. The whole battalion is there in formation, which is nice to see everybody again. And the yellow ribbon are reintegration programs, which is really good. The Guard has those now. So it's a couple different events of getting everybody back together, and that counts as your drill for that month. And you get all these briefings about benefits, services, counseling, everything that's available. Family members can come, etc. So that's how they kind of do the reintegration process.
Now, you're still in the National Guard, so how long is your time commitment?
Well, as an officer, you don't really have a time commitment. It's until you retire.
What are your personal plans?
Oh yeah, I plan on staying. I work full time for the Guard too, so I plan on staying into my 50s. So that's a little bit depressing to think about at this point, but.
So now I know you work at the armed.
Yeah, in Middletown.
What's your job there?
My full-time job there is that I work for the Human Resources Office, HRO. I'm actually a federal technician, which means I wear my uniform. I'm accepted service, but I get paid as a federal employee. And what I do there is I'm the supervisor now for the benefits section and the training section, ID card section. So it's Technician Services branch is what it's called. So we support all of the full-time employees with basically everything that's not hiring and firing. That's our section.
Now, as a National Guardsman, what are your duties now?
So I changed out of command of F Company in March 2012.
So right now you're the commander of F Company?
No, I switched with somebody else. A guy named Captain Peterson, he took over. And then since March until now and going forward, I am the Troop Command S1. I've gotten an additional branch of the Adjutant Corps. So now I'm a personnel officer. no longer logistics. And I am performing the role of the Troop Command Adjutant, working again with Colonel Ebon. And it's good. It's good. I mean,
Personnel compared to logistics.
It's different. I really love logistics. I'm passionate about it. I don't think it's ever going to compete. But I was excited during, we did the response during Tropical Storm Sandy. And as a result, I learned that personnel is actually pretty cool. There's definitely things, part of it that, I didn't know about. And, we've got the whole media aspect, which falls under personnel. We've got the whole personnel strength and accountability part of the mission planning process. We got the awards, and there's definitely still a lot of facets to it. It keeps you busy. So I like that, there's always some kind of requirement, and I got to learn my job a lot more with the Tropical Storm Sandy response. So it was good.
Tropical Storm Sandy was a huge problem for the coastline in Connecticut. Were you called up ahead of time, or when it hit, had you been preparing for it because we knew it was coming? Yep.
Troop Command, which is again, where I work under on the drill side, was given the mission of being kind of like the task force commander for this whole storm response. So we had gotten called up Saturday. On Friday, they started doing some planning, and then Saturday and Sunday, really full-on mission planning. And then I came on active duty that weekend, and then the storm started hitting Sunday night and through Monday. And then everybody was already, coming in for active duty on Sunday night and Monday. So it was good to have that proactive response this time. And people were already in place and ready to respond when the storm was even hitting. They did some high water rescues and stuff even during the storm. So it was definitely good to have in advance the soldiers come in.
Have you been called up for any other in-state emergencies since you returned?
My unit has, but I was not a part of them. For one of them, I was away at training during the hurricane last year. I don't even remember what it was called. It was the one in August. Irene. My unit was called up and was part of that response. I was still with FCO then. And then in the winter storm, Alfred, we were called up for that too, but I kind of command and controlled that one, but we didn't have a whole company effort. We had maybe like 2 squads worth of guys that did response. So we just kind of organized it and then put them out to who they were attached to. But yeah, we've been part of all the call-ups. And big thing on this last one actually was that because we were the task force commander, task force, in charge of the task force, we were also in charge of helping make sure everyone got paid to stay active duty on time. And the pay is always a big deal. So that was one of the big things that we were always being asked about, and made sure that it was, everything was up to date and name by name correct. So
when you came home from Afghanistan, what was your homecoming like?
Oh, great. I mean, it's the greatest thing ever. Coming home is the greatest thing ever. I have a really supportive family, which I'm very lucky to have. And so both times my family was there waiting for me, to get off the plane. And the second time my dog was there. And it's always nice too, because like I said, my boyfriend, came home at the same time, so his family's there. And I mean, nothing's happier than coming home from deployment. Nothing's happier than that. I can't even imagine the people's wedding days compared to that, to be quite honest.
Did you go back to school at all?
I did in between the deployments. I went back for a little bit, and I said, you know what, this isn't the thing for me. So I went back at UConn and to try and do some work towards my master's, and I don't know. Again, like I said, with some other stuff, maybe it was just the stars aligning, but in a bad way, because the class wasn't right, the classes weren't right, and the timing probably wasn't right, because I was doing the train up for deployment, and I was like, you know what, I'm not averse to going back to school, but I'm not really motivated to do it right now either.
Did you make any close friendships while you were on active duty?
Yeah, you mean like when I was on regular active duty? Yep, I have a few friends that I still stay in touch with. The people in the first interview, I think we mentioned some of them that I considered kind of my mentors. Sergeant James Brown, Colonel Beatty was my battalion commander, Colonel Muniz was one of my bosses, and then a couple of my peers who are now actually out of the military as well, but we stay in touch. All of us stay in touch, so. And most of my soldiers, I stay in touch with them as well. Facebook, it's a beautiful thing.
Did you form any friendships with any of the Afghanistan people?
Not really. I mean, some while I was there, but nothing really lasting.
You don't stay in touch with
No.
How would you say that your military experience influenced your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, I mean, I don't know how it could not, but I don't know if we mentioned it before, but I am interested to go back to like my high school reunion just because I think people will be surprised. And I say that because I grew up in Connecticut. I used to be a lot more liberal with different ideas that I had. And part of that was probably being a lot more naive. It's easy to be liberal when you're 15 and you don't really have that many worries. But I never really knew that much about the military before, I guess. And now, obviously, my whole life is intimately entwined with the military. I work full-time. I've had these deployments. All my friends are military. So it's definitely, it's become one of the central things in my life. And I'm happy for that. I'm very happy for that. I really enjoy it. I think it's a great organization. And it's so, America's history and the military history are one and the same. And that's a cool thing to me. And I appreciate, stuff like this because, you keep these histories of these World War I, World War II, Vietnam guys alive. And I think that's really important. And a lot of times our society doesn't remember or think or appreciate what these guys before us have done, which is so incredible. So incredible. So it's, being in the military has taught me the value of military history and appreciating what these former veterans before our generation have done.
Have you joined any veterans organizations?
Not specifically. Now I am part of AUSA, so there's a lot of veterans there. Not anything like the VFW or anything like that. But I guess since I'm still in, maybe that's why.
So involved.
I see all of my veteran friends every day, so it's not like I'm not connected to that organization anymore.
What are your future plans?
Stay in. Keep being a technician, working full-time for the Guard. And I guess, future goal, now I have to set a new future career goal. Maybe should be to, make it to 06. That'll be it. We have it recorded now on camera. New future career goal, make it to 06.
What advice would you give to young people considering the military?
I think it's a great career. I really do. I think that you need to be joining it for the right reasons. And people oftentimes say, oh yeah, I joined for the college money. And you hear that. because the Guard does have great programs out there for college money, but it can't just be that. You have to join because you think you're going to enjoy it, because you want that camaraderie, that family, you want that challenge. Because if you just join for the money, you're not going to be successful. But I really think it's a great career choice. It is going to be a lot harder, I think, going forward for people to get in the military because of all the, fiscal issues we have going on right now, downsizing again. You're going to see more people being discharged, I think, and a lot more scrutiny in the process of getting new recruits. So I think, the caliber of the military might go up a little bit. But I would not shy anyone away from it. And, look at all branches, too. Obviously, I love the Army because I'm in the Army, but all the branches have advantages and disadvantages. So definitely look around and do your research is what I would tell young people, and see what's the best fit for you, whether it's active duty, Guard, reserves, Marines, Navy, etc.
Alyssa, because you've had such an extensive career so far in the military, and you've done a lot in the period of time you're in, are there any other memorable experiences that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I don't know. I can't think of any specifically right now. Yeah, I can't think of any specifically right now. No. Like I said, when I went on to active duty, the purpose of it was that I wanted to do the best I could as a platoon leader. And having those jobs of being a platoon leader and company commander, I think being a female was an advantage sometimes, because something that I really appreciated and tried to really hit home in both of those scenarios was that this organization was a family and that they could bring their problems to me. And oftentimes they did. There'd be problems at home, school, in the unit, work, whatever. And it was so fulfilling to be able to help people, or even sometimes just lend them an ear and some advice, and build those relationships with people that otherwise I honestly probably never would have met, cross paths with anything in any other circumstance. So it was so rewarding to be able to provide them that comfort and leadership, I guess.
As a commander, what would you say was the number one best way of keeping morale high?
Keeping communication open both ways. Letting soldiers know that they're important and letting them know what's going on from my side down to them, because nobody wants to be kept in the dark or made feel like things are being kept from them. And being available from them coming up, being reasonable, being available, and knowing that, they're people too. And if they say I have a family reunion, then you should probably let them go to the family reunion. Like, stuff like that is going to build going forward, and they're going to have that respect and loyalty for you because you saw them as a person and get to know them individually. Really, take each one of them individually and know who they are, what they're about, what's going on at home, etc.
Was combat and command what you expected it would be?
I don't really know what I expected it to be. For combat. I guess it was. Maybe, I guess, in some ways it was worse, in some ways it was better than I thought. But command was pretty much what I expected it to be. It was definitely, like I said, a lot less fun than being a platoon leader, but it was pretty much what I expected it to be. And I was fortunate both as my experience on the first deployment and as a commander with the 102nd, because they really do give their commanders a lot of responsibility and leeway to make your own decisions, which I think therefore makes you learn and remember things in a way that if somebody was force feeding you requirements, wouldn't happen. So I knew that going into the command with them, which I expected them to let me do again, and they did. They let me be the commander of that unit, which was great.
Alyssa, is there anything you would like to add to this interview that we haven't covered?
I don't think so.
Well, thank you for the interview. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.